Recovery. We are talking about it today on the show. Something near and dear to me is helping individuals through recovery. And with me today, we have Tom Farley, who's here from recovery.com.
Yes.
And we also have Ben Graham here, my husband, who founded the River City Recovery Program. And we have 3 sober living houses here in the city of Portage, Wisconsin.
That's right. Hi.
So we've come together. We've talked a little bit before the show, and I'm interested to get into it now as we're sitting here together to talk about it. So recovery.com, Tom.
Yeah.
Explain to our audience what that is.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a web resource. It's a website, if you will, a search engine, kind of like a TripAdvisor for treatment is where it started out, connecting users to the right treatment. And we saw and it's a startup in Madison, Wisconsin, which is great, but it's global. But we saw certainly since COVID a massive increase of people searching for treatment. And that's a good thing. But the problem is, if you search, I want addiction treatment near me, you don't know what you're going to get. It's still, driven by, a lot of, SEO and paid placement and things like that. And you're going to get a list, but it's maybe not what you're looking for. I like that. My simple way is if you went on the internet and said, I need a blue shirt, and you typed in blue shirt, you're going to get these pictures of short sleeve, long sleeve, turquoise, navy. You're still not where you need to be. Mm-hmm. And so this was created, this site, to really match up what are you looking for? Do you want 12-step, or is it something else? What insurance do you have? Where geographically, in the Midwest, or specifically in Wisconsin, or anywhere really. And sometimes, if it's somebody that has a job, that they need to be in contact with, where can I take my phone? Because a lot of places that, that's part of the treatment is there's total lock off from the outside world, but some people that's just not realistic. And so you probably won't get many choices that way, but something, and you're right, you're where you need to be. And not only is it great for the individual, but it's great for the treatment centers too, that we're delivering people to their front door that are the right people. Right. And so they're not spending all this time with assessments and what do you have and verifying insurance at a time when they need help right now. You're at the right place.
I can see how this would be very powerful for people because, recovery used to be very anonymous.
Yeah.
It was, you met in dark basements away from everyone else and no one talked about it. Whereas now today it's becoming more and more talked about and more out there, and people are looking for resources and connections, and so making a platform such as this is going to be so useful to individuals that are looking for resources.
Well,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only, and in that process, taking back really control of your of your health and what you need to heal. A lot of times, we'll just go, I need help, and that's great. You've got to that place of acceptance and admittance, but you're still asking for people to find you the right place.
And that was one of the challenges with opening the sober livings. And Ben, you can speak about this, is getting the word out that we were there. And that was a process in itself, because we were open for several months and just weren't getting anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. I can see where this, the recovery.com could be a great resource, because a lot of the treatment centers, they only know of a few a few places that they can seek placement for people outside of, the actual treatment center, and then just having the resource for people to find the correct treatment for them. Having it all in one spot, I think is an incredible resource, not only for the individual, but also for the caregivers and the sober living and all the other people involved.
And just, it is what it is. And, because of the system, the way it's set up right now, a lot of the money and a lot of the insurance, a lot of the coverage, is really concentrated in treatment in that 30 days. And the farther away you get away from that, actually, the more deeper you get into recovery, it gets less and less. Like there's almost no money in recovery. There is in treatment.
Right.
And so you get less and less attention. So all right, but it's probably the most important of the whole piece is the recovery piece. So,
well, I mean, to speak on it a little bit, like the initial treatment portion, everyone has this idea that after treatment you're fixed, and they want to put out the fire as quickly as possible. So that's very attractive, and that'll get the dollars, to send your loved one there,
right?
And have them taken care of, and of course the loved one at the time, they need the help. But recovery is a journey. It's not a destination, I
love to say, like, treatment is like, somebody's in the deep end of the pool drowning.
That's right.
And you got them to the edge. Treatment gets them to the edge, but they're not out of the pool, and or they haven't learned to swim, or that just, you saved a life. That's huge, a necessary first step. But so much has got to go. Either find a way to get in the pool, get out of the pool, or learn to swim in the pool. But
no, I'm somebody who experienced treatment, and that was an eye-opening experience for me. It allowed me to pause, to be separated. It gave me a lot of great information. But you're right. All it did was get me to the edge.
Yep.
And when I left, I went home. And at home, success wasn't waiting for me at home.
Yeah.
It was not. And that's why we do sober livings here in Columbia County. Because
so tell us, for our audience that is listening, what is sober living?
Yeah.
Okay. Sober living is first and foremost, it's a safe place to be for someone who is in recovery. It's a place that can't be taken away from you. In a sense, as long as you are doing what's necessary to stay there, which is taking care of your share, it's being centered in recovery, and just being a generally good person, and that's what we're definitely looking for. But sober living is a continuance after treatment. Honestly, a lot of people cannot be successful going home. They cannot be successful. A lot of people don't have a place to go. They get cleaned up. Their family still doesn't trust them. They don't want them home. They need more time. There could be, a relationship problem with whoever they're with, and it's not mended yet, and they need a place where they can thrive and put their life back together. And that's what sober living does. It provides that nucleus.
So they come into a residential home, and they share that space with other people that are in recovery.
That's right.
With a set of house rules so it's a communal living situation. And ours are divided. We have a women's house and two men's houses.
Right. We have a women's house and two men's houses. And, it's a shared living space. It is communal living, but I like to think of it as a safe place for someone to nurture their recovery and get on a little more solid ground out in the world. All of the things that we're doing and what I can see recovery.com is doing, it's putting it back out there into the public. It's breaking the stigma. It's giving recovery a safe place to be.
Yeah. And what I love, and the thing is, when we say, like, we have these, house rules, and but think of it this way, like, these are people that have come as I have come, like, in such, chaotic, environments and really, they come from a place, no matter where they are or what it's for, they're in such a state of survival.
Right.
And that's not what a human. You're just surviving. So now you put them in this environment, in the sober living environment, learning to be a human again, but also like you're also coming from a place where you feel like you've done nothing in your life, and the simple thing of making your bed every morning or doing the dishes, you did the dish, you helped out, you did the dishes, you accomplished something. Like, you think it's a small thing, but all of a sudden you're like, you feel that. You like that sense of accomplishment of just making your bed every morning. I'm like, yeah, I did that. Most of your life, you never ever got anything close to that.
And it's also the community within the house that support. You have an instant support family within the house, and everyone has the same goal in mind. Everyone
wants to heal, and the affirmation and the motivation that you never got because you were so isolated.
Right, and judgment goes out the window there because everyone is coming from the same spot, usually within the same demographic, even if they're coming from different walks of life. They're usually coming in broken, unsure. A lot of them are unemployable. They don't really have a whole lot of life skills to take on things, but they have a safe place where they can begin to do that stuff in. They can begin to tackle things like getting a license, employment, getting reunited with their families, loved ones, children, so forth, and they have a safe place to do that. And, a lot of times when they go back out into the home, things get very stressful there, and there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. And, in the sober living environment, they can come back and they can heal from those experiences, and they have all the other recoveries there to bounce the ideas off of, and it works.
What my favorite thing is right now, and we have done a lot of studies at recovery.com on like what are the trends and what's growing, and because we really see what people are searching for, what's successful. And so I love that aspect of it, that it's really, I don't know, there's the numbers. So that's down a different hallway. I don't go down that hallway. But the two growth areas in recovery, in treatment and recovery that I love, because it is our peer support and sober living. Those things are totally growing. Right. And do you know why I love those the most is because when you went to treatment for years, families, like, you went away. And families are like, oh, all right, they're getting help. We got a reprieve. Communities were like, we don't have to worry about that person anymore. And you went away. And now these two things, peer support and sober living, are done in the community. And the community as a whole gets to see people heal, people that they've written off, that the individual themselves have written off.
That's right.
And now you're seeing this healing happen right before your eyes, and these people are doing amazing things that no one would have thought that would be possible ever, including the individual.
Miracles.
We got to witness that firsthand over the holiday season, where some of your people went home to spend Christmas with their families.
That's huge.
And their families welcomed them back home. And in some cases, they hadn't had that in years.
And even in that respect, even when they go home, there's still a stigma, and when they leave that environment, they get to come back to their safe, sober living environment, and be back in that group where they're.
Do they talk about that? Do they? When they come back, like, what do the other people in the house like? What? Because they probably want that too, and are nervous and afraid.
Not everybody has the same experiences. Some are welcomed home, some aren't.
Yeah, right.
And it takes it takes some time, and there's some sadness and some envy and some wonder about it, So yeah, they all talk about it, and they talk about the behaviors, and they talk about, the trip prior to, and then the return home, they try to strengthen one another up to make it through, because ultimately the goal is to experience life without having to cope with the substance.
Yeah, manage. I used to call it what I used to do when I was drinking. The only way I knew how to manage all the emotions I was going through was to drink.
Absolutely.
And when I say all the emotions I was going through and why they need managing is because I didn't know what those emotions were. In my family, we used humor to cope with everything. If somebody was angry, we laughed. If somebody was frightened, we laughed. If somebody was experiencing joy, we laughed. Which it's not the same thing.
Right.
We couldn't even go to the positive end. Laughter kept us, it was coping with all these other emotions. And really, we also developed a second one, which was anger. When people didn't join us in our laughter, if they were still in pain or whatever, we would get frustrated and angry, and we would just go back and forth, and never developing these things in between, like real love, like love or empathy or gratitude. That all these things that I learned in recovery that I'm like, what are you talking about? Like gratitude, do a gratitude journal. I'm like, huh? How
is that going to help?
Yeah, why don't you know what gratitude means? Yeah. So, and really, really being able to identify how I was feeling with the right emotion. Why are you angry? It's like, honestly, I'm not. I'm sad. Okay, well, then why are you yelling? Because I don't know the difference,
Right.
Are you really angry, or are you just frustrated? And
Right. And that's one of the gifts recovery is giving us. It keeps us from hitting too high of a high, where we want to cope a different way, and too low of a low.
Yeah.
Where we want to cope a different way.
Well, because our response to that is like, I can self-medicate, both those really well. I can write my own prescription for that.
Absolutely.
And
one thing I heard you guys talking about earlier, and I think people that haven't had the experiences that you both had and are on the outside looking in, is what is the difference between being sober and recovery?
Oh, yeah.
Because people think it's the same. Like if you're on the outside, well, if you're sober, you're recovered. I didn't understand the difference between the two until actually you explained it to me at one point. But you guys were talking about that a little bit before. So could you explain to our audience being sober versus recovery?
Well, being sober is just that. It's just being removed from the temporary solution. And when Tom was just talking about it, what are those emotions? Why am I feeling them? What's the root cause? What's the root cause? Is it, and then looking at that stuff, looking at, and talking about it, like I said, how is a gratitude list going to help? Well, we don't know until we do it. You know what I mean? What's the root cause? Have you even made a list of fears? Have you made a list of where you've been egotistical? Have you done a daily check on just your mood, your attitude, what you felt for the day? It's exploring all of that stuff, and that's more into a recovery mode. So
being sober is like you still have all of the emotional undealt with emotional baggage, and you're still stuck in the same frame, but you're just not
sober. Yeah,
you're just not drinking or using at that time, but you haven't dealt with any of that.
Well, we don't abuse any substance because we want to. we have some pain or something, some trauma that we're trying to get. So when somebody's saying like, "Oh, you drink too much," it goes in your mind that, "Oh, well, then all I have to do is stop drinking and everything's fine." It's like, no, you're drinking for a reason. Let's go there, and that's what recovery is learning to.
And that's where the 12 steps come in.
Yeah. Well, we learn early on that it's a solution. That it's a solution. And then we start using it for a solution for a, not just a breakup or a, loss of a job or loss of a loved one or something major. We start using it because it's cloudy today, or I'm bored, or I'm lonely, and that's what we need to cure is, well, why are we feeling lonely? What have we done? What have we done about it today? Well, if it's cloudy, what are your options? What are you looking? How far are you diving into yourself?
Yeah, and I see it a lot of times. When new people come into, like as I said, I'm 12-step AA. That's my recovery solution.
Me too.
And you see people coming in and like, and you think of had a couple of years, and then they go, oh, my dog died and I really felt like drinking. And I'm like, still? Really? Come on. I'm like,
We're Talking About It is brought to you by Our House Senior Living. Visit us at ourhouseseniorliving.com.
It's not because your dog died, so you were sad. Right. Deal with, let's deal with the sadness, not find a solution to, it's so... dig a little deeper, like you're feeling an emotion, and then that means you're alive and you're human. That's all, So that's a good thing, Don't try to drown that out. Deal with that and recover from. Every day there's an opportunity to recover.
I mean, for me, it's easy to say that today because I have had some, as we do as time moves along, we have some traumatic things that happen in our life, and we learn that, we have habitually turned into going to 12-step meetings rather than a bar. So we turn into a 12-step meeting rather than a bar. But early on in recovery, like a lot of people, their go-to is, drinking or substance use, of some sort, and that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about it, because places like recovery.com, that has, if you haven't looked at it, you showed it to me earlier, and man, that is a cool website.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, simple. It has, you can filter your search so beautifully. It's tailor it for yourself to find the help that you need. It's wonderful. But there is an issue that I like to talk about is these outlying areas, like where we're at.
Yes.
There is very little recovery there, and something like recovery.com can certainly help all of these smaller entities get on the map where they can be found a little easier.
Yeah,
and connections can be made.
And it also shows there's more. We come into it with so little knowledge, and people tell us, and we believe that we have to go someplace. And some of us do have to go to someplace, but we don't think of the other things like, there could be some, telehealth, some virtual option. There could be, an outpatient. It could be just an AA meeting. We focus on I need help. This is where I can check in and get healed in 30 days, and I'm good. So it's that knowledge. There's another part of our site that really delves into even some of the stories of people that are in recovery. What does my insurance pay for?
Right.
What is this treatment they keep suggesting? So
what are my options?
Building that knowledge, yeah.
Right.
And start. There's something you can do right now.
Right. We get a lot of people reaching out from all over the state of Wisconsin, and there are some specific reasons that they'll reach out to us in particular, because we do accept people on Suboxone, methadone, things like that, and to have all that stuff on a website where a person can tailor it to themselves is just great, because it will save so much time, and it will get them right to the help that they need a whole lot quicker.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful thing that you guys are doing over there.
Knowledge has a way to, it gets us over. The fear is just such a hurdle. One of my favorite sayings is, recovery exists on the other side of fear. And knowledge is one good way to really overcome some of that fear. Like when I first got into recovery, like one of my favorite places in the world where I drank a lot was up north. I mean, who doesn't love it? Like in northern Wisconsin, I spent every summer of my life up there. And I got in recovery. It's like, God, I don't think I can go back up there again, because I associated with drinking until, that's what that's what it was. All these places that I used to just thought were the amazing places. And then a clinician that I used to work with, who also was an authority, he goes, "Are you kidding? That's one of the best recovery places. There's so many recovery groups up there. Like, right. You are not alone up there." I'm like, wow, why didn't you tell me that before? Like, now it's just like, thank you. And I find in those places, I find my recovery community, and oh my gosh, now I enjoy those places more than I ever did.
Well, I got to tell you, you made me think of something, just talking about reminiscing up north and things like that. I was thinking about the culture. Yeah. The culture of Wisconsin, the culture of wherever anybody's at, here in Wisconsin, it's a drinking culture, and it's embedded, it's part of life. That's what people think that they need to
generational.
do.
Certainly generational.
You look at, I could be wrong. I think it's somewhere like 8 bars per 10,000 people.
Yeah,
in Wisconsin. I know where we're at. We were able to count up 20 some odd places that you could get liquor in.
Portage.
In Portage.
Yeah, right.
And there's a census of 10,500 people, so well above the state average, and there was no real recovery. There was a few meetings in town, but there was no sober living. There was no drop-in center, and this is what we're really, River City Recovery, that's really our goal, is to change the culture within our community so that there is more than just a safe house to go to. We want our recoveries to have a safe community to come to, because as people were recovering, they were recovering going to treatment centers, coming back to the outlying areas, a small town, and there wasn't that culture of recovery. You were back
in isolation again.
So then they would So then they would either go back into the system, whether using or drinking or going back into institutions and jails, or they were transplanting themselves, to places like Madison, Milwaukee, Green Bay, where the culture of recovery was richer. So that's what we're really doing, is we're just digging our heels in, we're holding ground, and we're really trying to impact the community as a whole. It goes much deeper than just the recoveries. We would like to see the community take a broader
It has the ability to really redefine and revitalize who we are back to a better day. Like, small town Wisconsin is like, oh man, it's a dream, man. It's just beautiful. Paradise. It's who we are, and it's dying if we don't pay attention to that and see. Like, I travel all over the place. I always find the most other person from Wisconsin. We find each other. It's amazing, and people are drawn to us. Like, oh, you're like, what is it? Like, you're from Wisconsin. Like, there's something about us, and people still talk about my brother Chris. And it's not because of his humor. Trust me, it's not because of his humor. It's because he's from Wisconsin. Yeah, I mean, I love looking at these other people that have gone to these very competitive kind of environments and professions, and yet they're so loved. Like in golf, Jerry Kelly, Stricker, they're loved because they're from Wisconsin. You know, the Watt brothers, loved because they're as a matter of fact, like I can think of one quarterback who's one of the most loved quarterbacks in the NFL, came here and played for the Badgers 1 year. You know what I'm talking about?
You have to tell me.
Russell Wilson.
Okay.
Russell Wilson came here, and I believe now he's like loved everywhere because he got it. He came in here, and it changed him. And we have that ability to change. Like this guy, I guarantee you, Russell Wilson wasn't anywhere close to what he was before he came here, but he's not because of that 1 year. And that's what we're risking if we don't get this culture like in line. People don't love us and are drawn to us because we're drinkers.
Right.
Not even close.
Right. You're right.
That's what's shadowing like who we really are. And maybe we're fearful of showing people that, but man, it's there. I know it. I've seen it. And I see it in people in Wisconsin in recovery. I'm like, that's a real Wisconsin person.
Well, it's just great to see places like what you're doing, what we're doing. And I know quite a few other, we could name off a ton of people that are on the website that are, that have skin in the game. They're digging their heels in, and they're trying to heal this community and give these people something outside of that treatment center. Help past that, because that is where recovery lies. It doesn't stop when you get out.
No, it's rest of life.
It is.
I think just living this life is just. Man, I didn't think that was possible. I thought I was stuck with what I was. That's the life I have. It's like it is still the life you have, but you're just you don't see who you really are yet. You're preventing people from seeing that out of fear and self-doubt.
I was lost too. I had conceded to the fact that I thought some people were supposed to have podcasts, and some people were supposed to be doctors, and some people were supposed to be lawyers, and some people were supposed to be locked up for the rest of their life.
Wow.
And I thought that at one point I believed that in myself. I believed that it was just a matter of time. Every day I woke up, I thought, well, it could be today,
But and we need to break ourselves of that.
Right.
Of that. As a community, I mean, I have done so much work on stigma around addiction.
Yes, you have.
That's great. 2 years ago, I got a call from somebody that said, "Do you ever talk to recovery groups in prisons?" And I went, no, because why does it? That has nothing to do with me. That's over there. But as soon as I was asked that, I'm like, oh man, am I walking around with opinions, maybe not stigmas, but certainly opinions about prisons and the people in them? Yeah, probably. Right. And I was really uncomfortable suddenly with that thought. And so I said, yes. And so I went, and of course, this was Racine, and they told other people. Next thing I know, I'm on this whole tour. But it was amazing. I have to lean into this, and I went, and it was life-changing. And I went in, honestly, I said, I'm not here to lecture you or motivate you or give you a presentation. I'm here because I'm in recovery, you're in recovery, and this is where I need to be and who I need to be with. And I got better questions than I ever got in a community from people. The real work is being done, and they're coming out. And I realized I'm walking around with people that have come to I'm not seeing that. Because my opinion is of something else.
Right.
So I did a talk in Green Bay last year for a group, and this kid comes up to me, and he's got khakis on and a nice polo, and he goes, "That was really good. I've seen you talk before," and I was thinking at some high school or community. It's like, that's great. Where have you seen me? He goes, I was at Red Granite, 6 months ago when you were there. correctional, and now I'm out and I got a job, and I'm like, I'm seeing this kid like there's no way I would have. You would have said like somebody, for me, like 2 years ago, I'm like, it ain't that kid, and it was like I talk about it all the time because the rest of the community needs to know that these people not only just that were addicted or alcohol or were imprisoned, like they're walking around doing amazing things, and you're not seeing it because of your opinions or stigmas.
They tell us don't leave before the miracle happens. Well, the miracle doesn't stop happening.
Yeah,
it continues to happen, and we get to witness it firsthand. With the sober living environments. I mean, it's so gratifying. I mean, it's heartbreaking too when you see people struggle and slip and go back out and whatnot. But, there's also that whole other side where they stay and you see them get reunited with their children, or you see them, see a guy who hasn't had a driver's license in 10 years, doesn't even think that he can. All of a sudden he's driving again and has a car, and the sheer joy on their face and the pride well up in them, and these are people that were bouncing in and out of the jails on the streets of the small town, causing havoc, causing drama, doing crime, and all of a sudden they're pillars of the community. They're helping other recoveries. They're not only back in there, paying taxes. We can talk about that stuff,
right?
And being a citizen, but they're volunteering. They're taking other people to meetings, and they're going down, picking people up from the jail. They're doing that work.
Yeah, they're healing themselves, but they're also healing their own communities.
That's right.
In the process of their healing, like everything about their lives now is about healing.
And you would recognize them but little from when they were using, and we always say, what am I looking for here? God never gives you more than you can handle. That's a cliche we hear a lot, but we always say that means the good stuff too. It's not just the bad stuff,
right?
That's the good stuff as well. The more work you put in, the more good things that you're able to shoulder. And just the miracles we've seen here in the community are great. I would like to find a way to get the community more involved in what we're doing. We're having our first little fundraiser get together on April 26th at the Northwoods, and I'm sure I'm hoping to see the whole community show up. The police station, the fire department, the county supervisor.
That's why that's how we met. That's why I come up to this place, because they're like that. Again, that is so us. That's so Wisconsin. These communities give communities back this ability of being who we truly are, and I think that's what you're doing, is like letting communities be community. With this, I just think it's so much better than in some of the bigger cities. It's just too much going on, but man.
Well,
I do want to ask you, I have a question, and I think this comes up sometimes for people that may be listening, is marijuana or pot. This comes up, like, I'm sober, I just do pot. And you see families, parents that are, we're off the hard stuff, we just do pot now, or just pot. And talk about that a little bit, the just pot, because the marijuana isn't what it used to be and when it was Woodstock.
Well,
so,
first of all I can say is I'm not here to judge anybody's, path to recovery.
Sure.
I do know within a sober living environment that if you do have marijuana in your system, you're not going to be able to live there. So if that's something that you feel like you need in your journey, well, you're going to have to do it outside of our sober living environment. It can be very triggering to others. Even just seeing someone impaired can be triggering, especially early on. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, and you can speak to it as well, pot today is not pot of yesteryears. You know, they have found a way to take pot and turn it into crack cocaine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought that I would never smoke a joint out of a glass pipe. You know.
But two things that for one of the things you said that I loved is like, it's not always about you. As you said, your behavior could be like really triggering for somebody else, and not in a community and under one roof where you're trying to like all live together. Like, think of the greater good. Like think outside yourself. Take the ego out of it, as we love to say.
When you guys talk about sobriety, it is clearly sobriety.
Yeah.
There's not marijuana. It's not. It is.
Well,
clear off of the substances.
Yeah, I absolutely. But why is that? And we talked a little bit about this before. Is like, I'm amazed at just this authentic self I've found myself putting out to the world and getting people like really wanting to, attracting people like you, they really like me. And it's because that authentic self. So if you're doing anything that blocks that authentic self from showing the world this person, then maybe that's not something you should be doing. If you're doing any substance to manage, this fear of some emotion or some trauma that you had, like work on that. But like you're not being the authentic self you can be, and you're not showing people, and you're not dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with. So I don't see how, any of that stuff is good, because it's blocking you from being, who you truly are. I really wish, and just on this subject, before all of this legalization, I really wish there was only one proper place to really start, and that's decriminalizing. I think that has caused undue trauma to so many people, and that's more of a drain. And when you think of the cost that has
a huge cost.
Yeah.
And I can only speak from my own experience. I smoked pot like I drank. I drank like I used meth. I used heroin like it was all addictively, So, when someone comes to us, it's usually they suffer from the same thing that I did most of the time. So for them to use any kind of mind or mood altering substance, they're never going to experience a different solution to that problem, and it's all about finding that other solution outside of it. Miracles, we've been talking about miracles. I've seen so many people come in that have been disabled on fistfuls of meds, with social workers telling them that they can't work and they can't do anything, and they're maladjusted to life. And I've seen so many times them slowly but surely, challenge themselves, and they get off the meds and they get off of everything, and they're working, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, 2 or 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, whatever it is, they have a beautiful family and a house, and and they never look back. Once they catch a little bit of that wind in their sails, they just never look back. They just take off.
I just don't think you can truly connect with people. And let's be honest, recovery is all about connection.
It is.
How can you possibly really, truly, authentically connect with anyone if you're managing, you're on some substance for whatever reason? It's not you.
Right.
Well, I think that for a long time, and even I was guilty of this, was thinking that, well, marijuana is really not that bad, especially as the state started to legalize it. You're like, I guess it's not that bad. What's the difference between that and drinking? Well, they're equally bad if they're misused.
Right.
And you're also setting an example for your kids. And when we see this generational epidemic that we work with, where they grew up in that household and now they're in sober living and their children aren't with them. The patterns repeat themselves.
Yep.
And so many of those stories start out with alcohol, and then it's marijuana, and then it is the gateway onto other things, and it destroys lives.
Well, that will forever be argued. I can just tell you that. I believe it as well as a gateway for me. It all starts off kind of small and innocent, and then until it turns into what it turns into, and not everyone is like me.
Well, but and again, there's okay. Well, so let's not talk about one leads to another gateway. One of the most amazing statistics I saw after the first state, Colorado, legalized, their biggest problem a year later, can you guess what that was? Teen homelessness.
Oh, wow.
Because all these people like I can smoke pot legally there, and they flocked to Colorado with no game plan, nothing, and all of a sudden they have no job, they left their family, but they can smoke pot.
So you're telling me it may be more than habit forming.
Yeah, exactly. There's other costs.
No, that's a great.
There's other costs. Yeah.
And I don't want to be judgmental at all. I just want people to think about these things.
Yeah.
Plant the seed and think about that, because I used to be one of those people. I was like, it's not my thing, but it's not really that bad. It's not, but it is, and it can be. And life is so much more grand without any of it.
Well, I think when we see things like, the fentanyl crisis and stuff that we see across our nation, it's very few people, in my experience, start off walking up in school and saying, hey, you want to do some fentanyl? No.
Yeah.
It's, hey, you want to smoke a bowl? Mm-hmm. And then that gets you into that culture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Again, you feel marginalized anyway, so you start doing this stuff, and all of a sudden you're finding yourself with other marginalized people, and you're like, oh, but these are my people, and I'm connected. I'm like, no, you're all still really
connections. Yeah,
it's the wrong connect. It's like, you're not connecting authentically, and it's not. Life's not getting better.
So how do we connect authentically? No mind or mood altering substances.
Yeah.
If you need help, look at recovery.com.
Yeah. There you go.
If you need continuing help, maybe we'll get on recovery.com. We're not on there yet, but I think that we absolutely should be.
I know a guy.
Is good. Yeah, I know. Yeah, absolutely. That guy, Tom Worley, works for Tech.
I keep saying recovery.com, but we're River City Recovery.
Life.
.life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love that.
If anybody wants to kind of look up who we are.
But yes. One last thing. One of the things that I've told people, relapse happens. We know that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But if you've ever been in a meeting where somebody comes back, how they're welcomed, where do you get that? I always feel bad. How long did it take you to get back here?
Right.
Because of the shame and the guilt. It's like, but look what you got when you come back here. We were so happy you're here.
It's life or death, and we know it.
Yeah.
We've lived it.
And it's just where do you get that? That just joy of coming back to and you see it on their faces where even before they came in through the door of the room, they're racked with guilt and shame. It's I'm going to have to admit that I went out again, and
right.
The response they get was oh man, I'm so glad you're back. You're oh, I should have come back last week.
We've seen it happen too. We've had people in the program. We've got people in the program right now that have left and come back. And how many times does it take? Sometimes it takes people 10 times going out and coming back, going out and coming back.
We don't care how long it takes. We just want to see them live.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to believe that
we're just trying to save lives.
Yeah.
And I'm always full of gratitude when someone comes back.
Yeah.
Because when they're out there, you don't know if you're ever going to see them again.
Right.
You don't know. There's a gentleman that Ben has been working with that he's put a lot of time in. He's out there again right now. He's been back twice, and now he's gone again. And I think about him often, and I just hope he's safe. I hope he finds his way back.
And the way I like to also say is like, I'm not in recovery to spend the rest of my life in some church basement. I'm a social person. I love being out amongst the people. But when I'm out there and I find myself being somebody I'm not, like just being this, somebody's brother, making everyone laugh, not being who I am, I'm like, okay, that's not you. Now you know what to do. You need to call somebody. You know what to do. Go to a meeting, call somebody. Like, get back. That grounds me. I go to a meeting and I'm immediately grounded. But I want to go out and show that to the rest of the people. If I just stay, I'm still in isolation if I just stay in, like, going from meeting to meeting.
Oh, that's right.
I need people to see that. But thank God, because it's always there. Just ready to come back, like you need a drink. I know it's there, or the fear or the self-doubt. And so I know what to do now. I know where to go.
Well, I just want to wrap this up and say I really appreciate the work that both of you do with people out there. And let's hope that this conversation today saves lives. And if there's someone out there that needs help, go to recovery.com. A great place to start with some resources. If you're looking for sober living, contact rivercityrecovery.life. If you'd like to help Ben and I on our mission to help others, if you go to rivercityrecovery.life, there's also a donate button, and that money is used to help house individuals in our sober living. So, Tom, I appreciate you so much coming up and talking with us on this very important subject. And I'm sure we're going to have more conversations.
Yes.
And stay connected.
And I can't wait to, there's one of my favorite things is I can't wait to come to the homes and just talk to the people. Like, as I said, I'm in recovery. That's where I need to be. And
they'd love that.
We've been talking about that way too long. Let's make it happen.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. Well, we said we'd talk about it. We did. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.